Thank you. Thanks, Sajida. And thanks to Rave for the kind invitation to be here this morning. And it's great. Okay. We've been flying quite high, 30,000, 40,000 feet. I'm going to try and bring us back down to a real technical, tactical problem. I'm even going to show you one of these. Some of you may recognize. Anybody recognize what this is? Yeah, it's a journal. And we still do a lot of this. These are going out of fashion. But somebody mentioned earlier, the digital transformation is a very primitive stage, I think. And what publishers have done, particularly journal publishers, over the last 10, 15 years, has digitized their content, created these enormous PDF warehouses, and really done a great job of stocking those PDF warehouses right to the rooftops, and supplying those PDFs over the internet. But if I go out and talk to scientists in universities and ask them about what they need, what are the jobs they're trying to do, what are the problems, pain points, nobody ever says, John, please send me more PDFs. That's what I want. I want you to send me more PDFs and I'll be completely happy. So, I think it's really how do you dive down into the content, not just about discoverability, but what are the pieces of content and how do you start to unpick that. So I'm going to tell you the story of how this journal has gone from being this very static, bound set of content to a product tool which is going to go live next week with the cooperation of Rave, who've been a great partner on this journey. I'm not a technologist, so had some help from the technology guys in the back office, and I may have to refer you to them if there are any deep technical questions about this. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about AIP Publishing and who we are, because I think it fits with the sort of philosophy and approach that we've been taking. We were founded in 1931. At a time when the world economy was going through a big crash, and AIP brought together 5 societies who were really struggling to pay the bills, to pay the printer bills, to pay the distribution costs for their journals, and brought them together in a collaborative, cooperative organization where there was economies of scale to deliver the then current business model. So it was very mission-driven. It was very committed to community and collaboration. And out of those seeds, AIP started its own journal program, but also grew to take on publishing for another group of societies and partners. This is a representation of our current program. I'll give you a bit of size and shape of who we are. We publish conference proceedings, about 100 new volumes a year currently. We publish in total 30 journals in partnership and with our own program, of which, if you start to slice our journals, they represent some of the biggest and most cited and most influential journals in applied physics, in atomic and molecular physics, and other fields as well. We receive about 40,000 papers a year submitted to our journals. They go through various stages of peer review and production, and we publish about 20,000 journal articles a year. We have a website, Citation, and that hosts about 1 million full-text articles, and it's delivering about 2 million full-text downloads each month. We have customers around the world, and it's split pretty much a third, North America, Western Europe, and Asia Pacific. We have been challenged but very much embraced open access, the new business model. We now publish 5 gold open access journals, and we have a hybrid model, which is there. It's a small uptake. Most of our open access is through the gold route. So that's a little bit who we are. We are based in Melville, Long Island, 120 staff. We have a very small presence in Beijing. And the size and shape of the organization has changed significantly over the last 10 years or so. If you look back, AIP was known for being very much a production-driven facility. We produced hundreds and hundreds of thousands of printed journals, pages like this, and a lot of it was done in-house. We've completely outsourced almost all aspects. So again, 120 staff producing high volume, high quality, high touch, with a lot of citation traffic. And we've done that using technology, of which our technology strategy, I'm not sure if it is a true digital strategy, but has really been to look at each application and then choose whether we build that or whether we choose a partner to work with. And we've partnered much, much more over the last 10, 15 years, because the ability for us as a small organization with 120 staff, about a quarter of them work in technology in some way or another. We just didn't have the horsepower. We didn't have the bandwidth to really drive the sort of, keep pace with the technology developments that were happening. So we've been very fortunate in choosing some really good technology partners. And the case study I'm going to talk about involves Rave here today. So moving to Surface Science Spectra. This is one of our partner titles. It's with the AVS. They used to be known simply as the AVS, the American Vacuum Society. They were formed in the 1950s, really producing high vacuum and using spectral techniques in high vacuum to characterize surfaces and interfaces of various materials. They have a membership, worldwide membership, and one of the journals they created was this Surface Science Spectra. In some ways, it's a very typical journal. It has content, it has text, but one of the special features of this is that the spectra that are collected in these machines, of which these are some of the acronyms of the techniques that surface scientists use to characterize semiconductor materials, superconductor materials, all the sort of high-tech materials that are used in electronics applications. They're using these machines, which often cost 6, 7 figures in terms of dollars. They're crunching through enormous amounts of data. And what we as the publisher did was essentially not value add, but we essentially value subtracted. And you're laughing, but it was true. I mean, it's all very nicely set out, all the parameters, all the metadata about what the machine settings were for each particular run and experiment, but it was pretty much buried in a file. Before I go into the case study in a little bit more detail, this is a little bit of where I think we are moving and where we need to find ways to accelerate. On the left-hand side, I think this is kind of our familiar territory for most publishers, and I'm fortunate or unfortunate to have the legacy of working in publishing for almost 30 years. The content is king. You know, it was the journal primacy, the impact factor, you had the leading textbook, whatever it was. the user was very much in the background. Certainly in the print world, you never even knew who the user was. The librarian didn't really know who the user was. They would reshelve issues, and they would know kind of how much things were used in a very rudimentary basis. The internet came along. We kind of started to work in our own closed proprietary walled gardens, and we're still doing that to a large degree. And data, the business data, not just the scientific data, but the business data behind the scenes was very siloed in applications that didn't talk to each other, didn't interoperate or interact. So, for example, your author data would sit in a different part of the business to your referee data, to your user data, your customer data, your usage data, and trying to get any of those things to mash together so you could create some profiles and analytics was absolutely a nightmare, so you never did it. We have embarked on I don't know if it's going to be multi-month or multi-year, so to the point it's continuous moving forward, but our data strategy is to create a data exchange where we can start to create 360-degree view of our customers so we understand them, what they're doing, and what their needs are in a better way. So we're moving to this part of the world where there's much more interactivity and interoperability. You'll see how content is still key, but the user has moved to the center in our world. The data is really paramount, and that's not just the scientific data, but the business data. And we're moving to this world where there's much more openness versus proprietary content. And the challenges coming forward in the business model value proposition are really around things like Sci-Hub, things like Mendeley, things like ResearchGate, where rights and permissions is a completely different world, a very Wild West world. And how do we manage this and create new products and services? We started this project a couple of years ago, so it's kind of a bit perverse really because it's labeled Agile, but in some ways it's taken a long time to get there. I think part of the reason for that is, again, our size, we're a small organization, but partly because we've been going through a large cultural change at the same time and creating new functions, new expertise, bringing on talent, very different talent to the sort of talent that we've been hiring traditionally. Not only software and developers, but also just the notion of product. We didn't really have product managers. Even project management was fairly rudimentary. So we've been building a lot of new skills whilst enhancing our other skills. And this slide came out of some research we did in 2014, which we labeled the Year of the Customer. It's kind of interesting that you would label any year the Year of the Customer, because shouldn't every year be the Year of the Customer? But anyway, that's how far away. But we have come an enormous way in being the Year of the Customer, in so much that we do an annual employee engagement survey. We get a terrific response rate on that survey, and now in fact, the top scoring category is customer focus. So we've come an enormous long way. This is kind of the space we play right now, but these are the sort of researcher needs, the pain points, and the slide I think Max put up earlier showing that whole circle, that whole plethora of cottage industry disruptive startups is around the other part of this life cycle. And this is where the opportunity space is. Can you find, can you take your content, can you take your data, can you create new product market opportunities? So here we go, back to SSS, Scholarly Research Journal. Each spectrum is essentially an XY data set. each data set, each figure can be recreated by anyone who has access to the supporting data in the journal. Now, to actually get the supporting data is a challenge in its own right, because you've got to find the email for the guy who has it. He's, etc. It's just a nightmare. But here's what a Spectra looks like. And a lot of science looks like this. It's essentially an XY plot, energy against intensity, and this characterizes a particular material. Here is the actual data itself. So we can send you that if you so wish. But there's hardly anybody who goes down this route. This journal has been going, say, for 25 years. The nice thing about it is that it's really well-curated data. It's well-structured. It contains information about 700 and some really important key materials in this field, number of spectra. It also includes a lot of metadata. Again, in the talk from Chris about inspec, that metadata becomes really important. But it didn't really meet the research you need. I want to easily search, compare the published spectra to my own experimental findings. Is this surface the same as the surface that's been presented here? How is it different or not? So the only way in the print journal, in the online journal, to discover these data sets was to perform a traditional literature search. If an SSS paper came up, one of the results, then you go and find the data, and you have to know to kind of read the small print, and you kind of, so it's totally uninteractive, it's totally unintuitive, and particularly unfriendly setup. So undiscovered. And there's a latent use case that wasn't, a latent user need that wasn't being met. Again, there's the data. So enter eSpectra. With our partner, the American Vacuum Society, we started off thinking much more long-term. And to kick that long-term thinking and planning off, we had a publishing summit. And the idea came up in some brainstorming that why is this journal sort of hiding away the best resource that it's got? What we designed was an application that could do these things. These were the first use cases, the user stories. The product requirements started to come out of this. And the prototype, the minimal viable product, the proof of concept, we started to build this out of these use cases. We've been through 3 rounds of usability testing, and again, it's one of our key lessons. We've never done this before, so that's why it's taken a lot longer than you might expect, but we've transitioned from being a production house to being a professional publishing house, and now we're kind of in the world of being a sometimes feels like a digital startup in a very small sense, but certainly we've got to apply the methods of software and product development which come out of those kind of startup industries. So the sort of language we're using, the sort of methods and approach we're taking is based around Agile and testing and validating at each key stages. So I won't go through these in detail, but each use case we were testing what were the jobs to be done, building out the user requirements and testing and validating it against rudimentary wireframes or early stage prototypes. These are screenshots from a couple of the early proof of concepts. And what you could start to do was pan and zoom on a spectra of interest. You could start to upload your own data. So if you just run a spectra, you just hit the upload button, quick drag and drop. It would automatically then overlay your spectra on the curated certified data, so you could compare and contrast it. These are the some of the application requirements. To be able to register, create your own profile. We are going to be rolling this out as a freemium premium product to start off with, so there'll be various aspects of the product you can use for free. And if you want to go and use the curated data, then you transition to a premium user. Uploading your own data, private and public, data sharing, the ability to share your workspace with colleagues in your work group, in your collaboration. These are some of the things that once we tested them with users came out as really strong features. And again, the whole kind of charting and data visualization, which was completely opaque in the PDF world. The development process is outlined here. I won't go through this in detail, but it's designed around an agile process with sprints. I say it's taken us a lot longer than we hoped, but we're at a really good place going forward. Here's a view of the sort of technology stack, front end and the back end. And Rave, as our technology partner, has made a major contribution in a number of key areas. Again, particularly around features and platform and the user interface. And I think a lot of lessons that we've learned around how to manage these projects, just the enormous amount of communication, coordination, just on a daily basis. And that's not always easy when time zones are concerned, but we time shift, and Rave are very comfortable with time shifting. We've made a lot of progress there. This is our team, and it is very much a cross-functional team. Again, this is one of the new ways that we're working. In the product, the product function brings together marketing, sales, IT, the whole business. This isn't an unusual shot at all. This is just part of a daily stand-up in the office. And as I say, it's very important to have all the key stakeholders in the room. So we've been working around the data, around our systems. We understand the data, we understand our systems, and integrating it with what Rave have brought to the party. There's a short product demo, a video. I'm just going to play that now. It runs for a couple of minutes, and then I'm happy to give a few closing conclusions.
Imagine a future where you no longer make spectral data comparisons using awkward, old-fashioned methods. A future where your search material is all in one place, instead of being buried in piles of journals. But what will this future look like? How will it function? And how might it benefit you, the researcher? A future where you can easily compare and validate your data against the data of your fellow researchers anytime, anywhere, at your convenience. A future where you can plot, visualize, compare, and validate your data with just one click. Now imagine this future as reality, in the here and now. Welcome to eSpectra Surface Science, the revolutionary new interactive platform designed to greatly simplify your spectral analysis. eSpectra is a powerful tool that allows you to search data based on intuitive keywords: author name, material, energy range, and more. eSpectra gives you unlimited access to the peer-reviewed XPS, UPS, and OJ data behind Surface Science Spectra, an ABS journal and database hybrid, the only one of its kind. eSpectra lets you search and plot over 4,000 peer-reviewed spectra from more than 700 different materials, all on one easy-to-use interactive platform. Compare and validate your own data against peer-reviewed results, and share your data with your community of researchers and collaborators. eSpectra also serves as a highly secured shared file cabinet for your data. What's more, eSpectra lets you search by material and identify peak energy assignments. So how do you share in all the knowledge, services, and convenience of eSpectra? It's as easy as going to espectra.aip.org, where you can get started for free. Sign up for eSpectra today and sign in to the future of spectral analysis.
Okay, thank you for bearing with me while I played that. So I think some of the lessons that we've identified as we've gone along, I've mentioned those as we've gone through the presentation here. I think just to highlight, getting buy-in from our publishing partner. That was, again, societies and associations tend to move in a slower, cautious, conservative way. And so getting them to see a different future. And now they're absolutely gung-ho, and they really want to do other things. So this has really been a great platform and starting point for them. One of the things is starting with the year of the customer and keeping the customer at the center. So product department kind of always understanding what are the customer insights, what are the jobs to be done, what are the needs and pain points. Just continuing to build on that. Finding the right partners, whatever space it is. So your own publishing partner, your technology partner, has been absolutely key to the success of this project. And creating an in-house cross-functional collaborative team in an organization which previously had worked in very siloed ways, because they had functions to do with editorial, production, sales, marketing. Just bringing that together has been a real case study for us internally as to how we work together and build out and innovate. So I'm going to end it there, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. This may not be a great question after that long wait, but anyway, we'll try. At the risk of making everybody groan, I have a quick question about copyright and whether, and really, whether or not you found it necessary to discuss it to get that cultural buy-in, because obviously once you deal with data, it's hard to copyright it, but clearly that curated data, if that's the premium bit, so I'm just very interested in how you took people on that journey.
Yeah. We had quite a few talks with our copyright lawyer. That was one, because it was an issue earlier on. What rights did the partner have to repurpose, content in this sort of way? On the other side of it too, it's not quite the question, but it's related, is to what is your privacy policy around people who put their own personal data on the site, and whether it It's there in their private filing cabinet, or they're going to put it in a shared collaborative. So again, thinking that you need to just think those things through of who gets access to what and how do they get access to it. And then being able to transcribe that into a user license, which again, we got a lot of advice from lawyers on both those sorts of questions. So yeah, I didn't mention it specifically, but it underpins a lot of what we've done in the background. Yeah, good question.
Hi. How did you capture all the images buried in the historically in the PDFs?
How did we capture the images in the
PDFs?
I think the authors just sent us their images as an EPS, just an image format in their submission. And submission to this journal wasn't easy. It's still not great, but we have made some improvements at the same time as we're doing this, thinking upstream, what is the author experience and how does the author submit not just the text around the article, but the data and the associated data files. So I think we just used standard figure formats as submission formats for authors in those early days.
Your last bullet here, or the first bullet on this last slide about getting buy-in from your publishing partner, can you tell us a bit more about that? Where did the idea come from? Sort of who originated it, and what was the trick to getting that buy-in?
Yeah. In general, a lot of the publishers we work with, the other societies, associations, we've tended to work with them on an annual basis, on a very transactional basis. So here's your service for the year, here's your fee schedule for the year, just thinking 1 year ahead of time. And in some of these things, you have to think a little bit further out as to where you want to be in 3 to 5 years. So that was the first step, was actually getting them to shift their thinking from an annual update and looking back and looking forward just a year to kind of thinking a little bit further ahead. And what that means in terms of moving from a transactional model to something which is more strategic and long-term. Fortunate to have one guy who is on our board of directors, but he's also associated with AVS. And I think he saw an opportunity, he saw a vision, and he was willing to make the experiment. And so getting him as an ally, as part of a coalition, he brought together a group of their editors and their key stakeholders to this, what was our first ever publishing summit with a partner, to think longer term. And we spent the best part of a day just kind of brainstorming what sort of things we could do. And this was one of the ideas that came out of them, and it was the idea that kind of just really took hold and seemed to resonate and seemed to really solve a user need for their community. It just fitted really, really well. But it was that interpersonal the soft side of selling a project to a partner organization.
Can I ask, did you get the user involved in sort of validation of the idea? Or how did you get some kind of sign-off, organizational sign-off?
Yeah, I mentioned we did 3 rounds of user testing. So we went out to labs, sat next to users, asked them what they were doing, how they were collecting data. Again, we talked to the manufacturers. The equipment that generates these spectra can be up to multi-million-dollar expenditure. They're very large pieces of stainless steel kit in ultra-high vacuum at very low temperatures. So there's a lot of technology goes into creating these spectra. And yet out the other end comes this very dumb artifact. And so we talked, and that might be another sales route. to start to build the software into the machine upstream, as well as making it available on a desktop. So yeah, we did 3 rounds of user testing, and we're fortunate one of our staff, this is her field, so she was an internal user tester, a validator as well.
Any more questions?
Okay.